Hello, everybody, and welcome to the War Room. This one is for the UFC 268 co-main event. This is Michael Chandler against Justin Gaethje, and I had to do a short War Room on this because I know a lot of people are excited about this fight. Very, very similar in their record: 22-3 for Gaethje, 22-6 for Chandler. Gaethje slightly taller at 5'11 compared to Chandler, who's 5'8, but it's Chandler that's got the 1-inch reach advantage. Okay, so Gaethje's kind of had two careers in the UFC. He was the Gaethje that came into the UFC and fought Michael Johnson, and that was blood and guts. I'm gonna punch you in the face more times than you're gonna punch me, but I know you're gonna punch me a bunch, so I've just got to punch you a few more times. I'm gonna be overwhelming. I'm gonna take your best shots. You can kick the hell out of my leg, and it doesn't make a difference. I'm gonna keep walking forward like a zombie. It was going so well, and then all of a sudden the Eddie Alvarez fight happened, and then after that the Dustin Poirier fight happened. It was like two fights back to back where he paid the same way for the same style that had got him to 18-0. After that, we saw an adjustment in his style. It was like he went back to the gym. He sat down with Trevor Whitman. He's like, okay, I'm gonna have to learn some more stuff, aren't I? Here, I'm gonna have to do a bit more work. I'm gonna have to be a bit smarter here. I'm gonna have to not let them hit me quite as much. And that's what we saw in his next two fights. And, knocking out James Vick, Edson Barbosa, and then obviously, going on to beat Cowboy as well. It showed a real big step forward. And something that I always get excited about when someone's had, a good bunch of fights where they've been undefeated and then they pick up a loss and they have to go back to the drawing board and change some things. And because he had the Eddie Alvarez fight play out the way it did, and then he came back against Poirier and just tried to do the same thing. He just tried to hard nose it, and it worked all the way up to the very top echelon of the sport. And if he wants to overcome that level, then that's where he's really got to make those adaptations. The Vic fight was beautiful because he forced him onto the punch. Same with the Edson Barbosa fight. He forced him onto the punch. It's still a pressure game, but it's not quite as reckless as it was before. Interestingly, in this fight, he's fighting Chandler, who does very much the same thing. I mean, when Chandler came into the UFC against Dan Hooker, that's what we saw him do. He likes to push people back against the fence. We saw it all the way through his Bellator career as well. What I would say is that Chandler needs less shots, and his shots are more accurate. I would say Gaethje still needs to apply pressure in order to get people to be moving in the direction of his shots. I think they've both got massive power. And I think both of them could catch each other clean with one shot and knock each other out. But I think Chandler is a little bit more the athlete. He's very plyometric. He's very well conditioned. He's very springy, very explosive. I mean, you can just watch him shadowboxing or shadow wrestling. It's almost like he's got that supernatural physical ability that Yoel Romero's got. He's very, very explosive. And I feel like his ability, that long, low stance that he has, his ability to crash into range with one shot. Was it Sydney Outlaw that he knocked out with one clean bang right on the chin and just folded him? Very similar to the way that Usman throws his cross. I do think there's a sharpness to Chandler's game that I've not necessarily seen in Gaethje's game. Even now he's turned a corner. He's got better skills and he's applying them better, but the level up for Gaethje was not being so reckless, and I don't think Chandler's ever been particularly reckless. I think he takes risks, but I always think they're quite calculated because he's always coming in with the intention to walk out the winner. And I think Gaethje felt like his strength was coming in with a do-or-die attitude, and that was always going to be successful. And up to 18 fights, he was proved right. When he stumbled a couple of times, that's when he had to kind of reassess. Now, of course, Gaethje's last fight was against Khabib, and I actually thought that he was going to be a very competitive fight for Khabib because Gaethje's style of front headlock wrestling is exhaustive, and I thought that he would at least be able to kind of meet that wrestling ability of Khabib, at least be able to kind of be scrappy and scramble and force Khabib to work and really force him to work hard for his takedowns. Little did we know that Khabib was just on an entirely different level that night, and probably all the time. Gaethje just didn't seem to look comfortable in that fight. Even in the opening where he was pushing forward and he was trying to engage Khabib, he still just didn't look himself. And he must have been expecting the takedown all the time. I don't know whether that is going to be playing on his mind against Chandler, or whether he's going to want to encourage Chandler to try and work, because much like the main event with Usman and Covington, you've got two really strong wrestlers, but one of them requires effort and failure in order for them to get to where they need to be. Covington needs to work hard and fail a few takedowns in order to get one. And if he gets one, then that massive psychological victory that he's got of, being the first person to take Usman down, it's worth that effort and it's worth those failures. I think Gaethje can maul Chandler and make him work much harder than he wants to and make this fight a messy fight. I think he almost needs to return a little bit to the Gaethje that we saw against Alvarez and Poirier, because the more he's lingering around on the outside and the less he's got control of the movement of Chandler, the more he's susceptible for those darting, spearing punches to the chin. If you're Chandler, you've got to want this at distance, right? You've got to want to be moving and not be brawling with Gaethje. Whether brawling is boxing or wrestling, whether it doesn't matter. The brawl is the essence of the fight in that moment. And if Gaethje can make it, bang bang, hustling and clawing at him and clubbing him and level changing and forcing him to deal with stuff, and then coming up and uppercutting him and forcing him back against the fence where Chandler's just trying to get a bit of space, and then as he goes, bang, that's when Gaethje walks him onto one of those big left or right hooks that he's got. Or Chandler's able to slow it down, and every time Gaethje steps forward, he can pop him and he can move off, or he can level change, and that will halt Gaethje for a moment, and then he can kind of find some space. Then he might be able to pick his shots and get Gaethje to walk onto that center line of that clean cross. Or he might want to wrestle and try and put Gaethje on his back, but then there's the question of, how effective is that going to be? Because even if Gaethje is taken down, he's going to maul his way back to top position. Gaethje's got a 69% takedown defense compared to Chandler at 71. They're very, very, very close in that respect. The output of Gaethje, though, is considerably higher. And I know this is based on more fights than Chandler's had in the UFC, but still, the stats are pretty obvious of what we would expect to see anyway. The strikes that Gaethje takes are almost or even outweighed by the strikes that he gets landed with, or that land on him. He doesn't want to be messing with that with Chandler. He needs to be taking as less shots as he can. So there's a little bit of evolution in that defense that he's got now since those two losses. I think is going to be a real value to him. But he still needs to bring that kind of brawling attitude to this fight. It's going to be good. He's been training with Usman. Usman is a bigger, more powerful version of Chandler, so that should be good preparation for him. But a very, very competitive fight. And, two of the best lightweights in the world. What is not to like about it? Anyway, enjoy the fights. I'll catch you next time.